I wanted to take a few moments to thank you all for being here and to thank the Halton region community for welcoming us today, as well the Go Transit team who work here each and every day, keeping this space friendly, warm, inviting, safe, and running on time. And I'd also like to officially welcome our elected officials who are joining us here this evening. So thank you for joining us. I would like to just briefly call out Chris and Lisa, if you can wave. Chris and Lisa in the back here are our local franchisees who live in your community and since June have been operating the Tim Hortons here, and I think a much desired amenity of having coffee and something to snack on in the morning. So thank you for joining us and thank you for supporting the community on our behalf. So one of the most important things that we strive for each and every day at Metrolinx is to have our space and our places and our trains and our vehicles be the safest they possibly can be. We have a very simple mantra of getting everyone home safe every day. And so with that, I would like to ask our Chief Safety Officer, Martin Gallagher, to walk us through a very brief safety briefing in case something were to happen this evening to make sure that we're all well prepared.
Is the mic on? Hello? Yeah, good evening, everyone. The picture's now gone, but I was going to introduce myself and say I'm the man in the screen there that doesn't have my photograph filtered. There you go. The only one. So you'll have seen on the screen some emergency safety instructions there. It's a single-stage fire alarm. Please exit the building immediately and wait for further instructions from facility staff, or the fire department. The designated assembly area is located in the southwest corner of the parking lot. We have a first aider. A first aid kit is located behind the ticket counter. I'm going to ask Heather, please, if you can retrieve the first aid kit, and the AED is located at the same spot. Peter Bailey will call 911. Susan Walsh is our first aider, and Leona Hollingsworth will escort emergency services. So, at the start of every meeting or event, we have a safety briefing and a safety moment. So today's safety moment is just, we've seen a lot in the news recently about coronaviruses and influenza-type viruses. Please, if anyone is coughing or sneezing tonight, please use good coughing and sneezing etiquette. Use a tissue, dispose of the tissue, cough into your sleeves. Please wash your hands afterwards. Enjoy the evening.
So before we formally start off and Phil Verster, our CEO, introduces the panel, I wanted to just formally conduct a land acknowledgement. So recognizing that we're on the traditional territories of many nations, in particular the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We acknowledge that Metrolinx operates on these lands and has a responsibility to work with the original keepers of the territory and the many diverse indigenous peoples living here today. Phil, over to you to introduce the panel, please.
Yes, so thank you very much for attending this sort of town hall or open session. We started these about 18 months ago. We do these fairly regularly across the region. And the purpose of these are to really come out to communities and to open the door and answer questions directly. It's sometimes, things are busy, and it's sometimes pretty easy to stay in Toronto and to forget that it's the communities we serve that makes a difference. And what I can tell you is from all of these sessions, what happens every time we hold a session like this, we learn from your questions, we take away the feedback you give, we hear about things that don't work perfectly, we take that away, we act on that, and from our side, we give you the answers as we have them. So tonight, if there are things that we can't answer you about because it relates to decisions that we don't make, but someone else makes, we'll tell you. If there are things that we know that are sensitive, we can go so far and to give you answers, and we'll say, sorry, we can't go any further with an answer on a particular topic. But the intent of evenings like this is to assist. to clarify what we do and give you an opportunity to ask us any questions. And after 18 months of doing it, we are still to have an event that's not a success and not enjoyed by all. Sometimes we don't enjoy it as much sitting on this side because we have to answer pretty difficult questions. That's all okay. Please ask any questions you've got. It's fine. Thank you for making the effort tonight to be here. I'm not going to introduce the panel. They are big and ugly enough to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Mathieu.
Okay, good night. Thank you for coming. So my name is Matthew Getzke. I'm the Chief Planning Officer.
Hello, I'm Leslie Wu. I'm the Chief Development Officer.
Hi, I'm Ian Smith, Chief Operating Officer.
Annalise Cherney, I'm the head of Presto.
And Matt Clark, I'm the Chief Capital Officer.
Very good.
All right, so I think we're going to take a first question from the audience. So if anyone in the audience has a question, if you could just raise your hand. We have Susan, thank you.
My name is Mike Cluett. I'm a counselor from the Halton region in the town of Milton. So thanks very much for having these things. I've got some brief points that I wanted to go over. I wanted to discuss a couple of main points that have been brought to us by residents from recent decisions that have been made. As you know, Milton is one of the fastest growing municipalities in Ontario. We're looking at a population growth. The last census was about 110,000, and we're moving our way towards 2041. We've recently had our allocation meeting at Halton Region, looking at close to 300,000 to 350,000. One of the top issues that we have that we're facing is obviously transit, getting people back and forth to work. One of the things, one of the main recent decisions that was made was to cancel route number 20, which was a direct route from Milton to Oakville. It was reduced due to cost and ridership. One of the main things that we've been asking here is to have you revisit that as an important decision for. We've been talking to a number of students who are now who are forced to take cars, forced to drive, which obviously increases traffic and gridlock, and it's not very environmental from the environmental standpoint. So whether it's revisiting route number 20 and maybe a reduced schedule or some kind of thing, but to bring it back, it's something that's lacking. And the second point that I did want to bring up is the Milton GO Station expansion. We know that we've had some recent talks with Metrolinx about the proposed expansion of the Milton GO Station. We're asking you that if you can revisit that. We're doing many things in that area, from a Milton mobility hub. We're redeveloping the area. We're trying to make it a commuter-friendly, transit-friendly, active transportation area. And if we feel that if we have to, as we go along with our Milton Mobility Hub expansion, that we are looking at potential costs to the taxpayer, because if we have to go back, do the Milton GO Station expansion afterwards, it could interfere with our mobility hub plans as well. So two main issues that we just wanted to bring up, obviously, was Route 20, and I know that other councillors are here, they're going to bring up some other issues, but Route 20, if we can reconsider that, to bring that back.
Let's take the two questions, and I'll rope in Ian and Matt to talk around the specifics. Let's start with Route 20. We have obviously looked very carefully at what loading patterns we have on buses, and Ian will talk to you about that. Some buses we've really struggled to get demand working, but Ian will talk to Route 20 specifically. On Milton Station, we have done a review of, and the work, Matt will share with you what work we'll bring to market on that. And maybe, Leslie, you can comment on the fact that Milton Station presents an opportunity for TOD and explain a little bit our transit-oriented development. But Ian, will you Route 20?
Yeah, I think Route 20 it must be getting on a year ago now. Now, this route, for those who are familiar, and it was well eloquently put, a lot of students did travel on that, and it did affect some people. But yeah, the demand just didn't meet the capacity that we had, and it was one of those quite tough choices to be made. However, all the routes that we work and all the areas that we cover, we do keep under regular review. And hearing what you're saying about how Milton is changing as an area and how we then serve that as transit is something certainly that we would keep on, keep on the boil and have a look at. Thank you.
Yeah, from a Milton Station point of view, I think Phil touched on this. We review all our projects in line with a business case and to understand whether or not they are going to bring benefits to the passengers and really deliver on the value for money. Our assessment, as we were looking at Milton, was that the station was adequate for the current service levels at Milton. We are going out to the market in the next 2 months for 850 parking spaces to the south of Milton station, as I'm sure you're aware, and refurbishment of the existing car park to the north of the station as well. So we went through a very rigorous process to align the scope and the benefits, and we're about ready to go out to the market now. We're just finalising the procurement documents, and so I'm not sure, Leslie, if you want to talk about TOD.
Thanks, Matt. And maybe just a little context about transit-oriented development. Our board, roughly about a year ago, decided, and along with the government, that it would be really important to understand the role for the private sector in advancing a lot of our transit infrastructure. So specifically with regards to stations, we have been engaging and we have opened the door to the development industry to identify opportunities to work business arrangements, commercial arrangements with them around new stations or rebuilds or rehabs of stations. In the case of Milton, I know that the town of Milton has been very positive about working towards transit-oriented development, and we are having really the conversations are actually progressing very positively to identify opportunities on our land or adjacent land first for a business deal for the actual construction of the funding for the station itself.
And the question you didn't ask, which we will want to answer as well as I thought you'd ask, is about service increases in GO to Milton on the Milton line. And so, and I can see it was in the back of your mind.
I have follow-up questions, obviously, from my colleagues as well.
All right. So on the Milton line, you probably understand the relationship we have with CP. We don't own that line, but we've been in very good and very successful talks with CP about the capacity on that line. We gave a very public indication about 8-9 months ago. We had similar discussions with CN, which allowed us to get much more capacity on the CN line. We are working very closely with the CEO and president of CP, Keith Creel. Keith has been very good, and CP are really fantastic colleagues, and we are working towards increasing the services somewhere in the near future along the Milton corridor.
Okay, so can we take another question from the floor, please? We're at the back there, and then we'll come back to you, sir.
Hi, my name is Andreas Kirkovic. I'm from the area of Stony Creek. I'm a regular user here at this station. I have a couple of questions. I don't know if should I confine myself to one, or
just have a go.
As a regular rider, one of the things that exasperates me is to see other riders. My assumption is a lot of casual riders putting their feet on the seats. And it should be obviously concerning and obnoxious. And why is this not addressed in a more forceful manner beyond the occasional mild announcement that is just ignored? I raised this last week with one of the ticket checkers, and they told me it is in fact a finable offense, but the directive from Metrolinx was not to fine people for it because it's bad customer service. Well, it's very bad customer service to see people putting their feet on the seats. It is dirty, it is unhygienic, and it's obnoxious, and it erodes the standards of all decent riders.
Cannot agree with you more. And Ian would probably say something, but I'll just go first. I'm unapologetic. When I walk down the train, I see some of their feet on any of our seats, I ask them to remove it immediately. And it's interesting. just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had someone that actually loosened the seat. The seat are held by sort of straps at the bottom. Loosened the seat so they can put their feet more comfortably across them on the seat in front of them, which is just disappointing behavior. So I can't really comment, and Ian will talk about whether I can tell you for one, there's no guidance as far as I understand that it's not a finable offense. But here's the thing. We've tried, and we continue to work at different ways to get the message across.
Yep.
We have an etiquette handbook, which has been very popular, and the etiquette handbook discourages people from doing that. So let us just finish. Yeah. So I appreciate it doesn't, because we still see that type of behavior. And maybe, Ian, you can comment on.
Yeah, it's very disappointing to hear that. But I think if I just take as an overview, and if you take this line here and our neighbouring lines, we have transit safety officers who you've probably seen. We've also increased, and we're increasing further, revenue protection officers who also have an opportunity to scout along trains and report antisocial behaviour, and also, if need to, deal with antisocial behaviour. And we do have a prosecutions unit as well. In fact, there's a fair few people who have been barred from travelling on our network, and then we reinforce that. So I think, should these things occur, which is very unfortunate when they do, by all means, if you see the customer service ambassador on the train report it, they do report those information through. And when we do start seeing either a peak in poor behaviour or certain times of day at certain times of line, we do have teams who do go out to these places and are successful at either arresting people or cautioning people or warning people, depending on the severity of the action.
But I think, Ian, we can take it away as an action. If there's a perception among some of the staff that this is related to customer behavior and therefore we say nothing, I think we can take that away with our teams, and you can talk to the teams.
No, that's a very
so we take the comment. That's very helpful feedback. If you got that feedback, we'll go away and address that.
I can repeat. A week ago, I spoke to one of your ticket agents, and they told me specifically, and I mentioned that I would be attending this town hall, and she encouraged me strongly, because she told me there was a distinct directive not to fine people for this, even though officially it's on the books. So you are not cracking down on this. And another point with your customer ambassadors, however you call them, as we know, riders, they're very few and far between, and most trains don't have them. You have the one person who's in the handicap car, and that's hardly someone I'm going to go to and call back for somebody who's being obnoxious. They're going to come down, person will take their seat, and as soon as the ambassador walks away, they're back up. So these little announcements are not enough. There should be signs, and it should state clearly that this is a finable offense.
Okay.
And on that score, in terms of your signage, the so-called quiet zone, you have this vague sign on every car upstairs, rush hour. Well, you should define rush hour, because I don't hesitate to tell someone if they're running afoul of the ostensible rules, but they'll say, well, it's 9:15 a.m. That's not rush hour. Or it's 4:30. That's not rush hour. So you should define it.
Thank you very much.
We'll take that
thank
feedback.
You. Thanks for that feedback.
We'll internalize
well
that.
appreciate it.
Yeah. And we have one more question from the floor before we go to one online, because this gentleman's been waiting patiently, excuse me.
Good evening. My name is Tom Baltus. I'm a senior here in Burlington. I use the GO train fairly often to go downtown or Clarkson, where my daughter lives. I just wanted to kind of relate an experience I had just this past Saturday going to Toronto and back. The trip going to Toronto was no big deal, it was fine. Coming back, unfortunately, we had selected the 9:43 train, which also coincided with the Leafs game coming out. So the York Concourse was just a zoo. Not really any better than the old Bay Street Concourse that we used to have to deal with. So I was kind of disappointed after all the renovations we've had in Union Station, which still appears to be ongoing. The crowds were just almost unmanageable. They were crazy. When the train was finally announced, the track was finally announced, there was just this rush up these very, very narrow stairs. maybe accommodate 2 people side by side. There were some people with mobility issues that slowed things down. There were some other options that we were given by the security guards, but most people just used the one set of stairs going up. And then we come to the actual platform. It's only about 10 feet wide. You've been to train stations in Europe. These things are 25 feet wide. People are not told to go to the platform at a specific time. You can go up and wait for the train as you wish. So that the whole situation, even after all these renovations at Union Stations, are chaotic in terms of crowds, in terms of having to wait to announce what track this train arrives at, the mad rush up the stairs, the fact that people are slowed down by people with mobility issues. There are no escalators, that you would expect to see in a modernized facility. So all these things are a problem. And while I was going up, I realized I had not tapped my Presto card. I had forgotten in the mad rush. So now I'm on a platform. I'm basically in this herd of people. Now what do I do? Why are there no Presto machines on cars in the train, like they are on the TTC streetcars? So I was basically riding illegally. I couldn't get out. I was stuck, all right? So that's one question I have. Why is there no Presto machine on each car?
So maybe we can take that question from you.
Yeah, but
yeah.
My story, all right? And also a bunch of issues I'm raising here. The quiet zone, even at 9:30 at night, why is there no quiet zone in these cars? I mean, it's crazy. The noise, the sheer chaos of people just yakking. Okay. Then we arrive at Burlington Station around, 10:30, 10:45. People are coming off the train here. The access to the bathrooms is closed. You cannot use the washrooms. So my question is, why, if you have trains running until midnight, okay, why are people not able to use the public washrooms at the station? Okay, they should stay open until your very last train arrives or departs. All right? So that's basically my experience on one trip. Okay.
So lots of great feedback packed into that question and that story. Thank you for sharing that. I think, Ian, you're going to take some questions.
Yeah, I'll see if I can just unpack that in sections. But I mean, and some of them are great observations. So thank you for that. I think first let's pick on Union Station, and I think Union Station at the moment is struggling with the volume of people we have going through it from the volume of people who now travel on go. Now, that is being remedied to a degree, and then there's further work downstream, which we may come on to later in questions. First and foremost, we don't have Bay Street open at the moment. That is due to open summertime this year. That's going to give us, I think, a footprint, a third more space, I think, that we have there, which will make a huge difference to how people will be able to walk around and flow around Union Station. At the moment, as you know, it's constrained. It's a bit of a building site as well, which also doesn't help with people moving around. We're also going to be moving the bus station as well, which will have an impact on how people move around the stations. When you mentioned talking between the station, particularly at York, and the platforms itself, this is a significant issue. Effectively, the trains and the volume of people we have and the the platform widths have outgrown their usefulness. And at a point in time over the next few years, we're going to be revamping all the platforms at Union Station to put more width in there. It's going to mean we have to do some major track realignments so we can make the space. So there will be a degree of disruption as we do that, but it is absolutely recognised. Just getting people flowing around Union Station at the moment is not seamless, and that's one of those key things.
And just to add, Ian, before Ian adds on, the interesting background here is when you look at how Union Station have been built, very often there's a track with 2 platforms, one on either side, and they're both narrow. It is sort of, and I'm not criticizing here, but many years ago, it was freight companies that built Union Station. So it's built like someone that runs a freight train that thinks the best way to unload people is drop them off both ways. Now that's true if you have lower volume counts. But now that we have such volume counts, your conclusion is exactly right. The bottleneck now becomes the platform. So one of the things that Ian is referring to is we now have a challenge. We first want to complete Bay Concourse, which, by the way, was not done by us. It was done by the city, but that is now completing, and we'll have it. We're working through to get it this year in place. But then after that is ready, you'll have more vertical access points, the staircases you talk about. So that'll solve that part of the problem. Then escalators was never part of the design, so that's where we are currently. You know, that doesn't mean we're not going to keep an eye on it and make sure that if we need escalators in the future, we have them. But then, after that, as Ian says, we are then into a program of a couple of years because, remember now, we are increasing our services. We have many trains coming into Union. At the same time, we want to create broader platforms. So we're going to start, and Matt is busy building a south platform, which is going to be much wider and which is going to be the right platform width. And then we are systematically closing, is it 2 roads?
Yeah.
1 or 2 roads coming into the station and creating a wider platform on those, and then a wider platform again. Your diagnosis of the flow and the congestion issue at Union Station is exactly correct. And our plans to rebuild it is exactly that. Sorry, Ian, I just want to add to that.
So I'll speak to the Presto experience and by both acknowledging the problem and then talking about maybe a bigger, more important solution, which is not just about fixing the Union Station experience. So one is that when Presto was first launched 10 years ago, nobody really, I think, could picture both how much customer growth there would be throughout, but also how the integrated system would work across all of the transit agencies. And so you mentioned TTC. It's a great example of fundamentally different experiences in the way Presto was installed in GO versus TTC. Both, you know, GO has fare by distance and TTC is a flat fare, but also physically the machines and the experience you have. It is today inconsistent across the 11 transit agencies we serve. Myself at the forefront, but all of Metrolinx recognize that that's not good. It's not good for the customer, and it doesn't help people move across different modes and different agencies as they travel, which goes kind of against the whole point. What I would highlight is both with when we do new stations or new services, but more importantly now as the integration of the different systems grows. And an example is with GO Transit expansion as well as the TTC expansion, where there are systems now that have more interconnected stations, we are actually taking a bit of a pause and stepping back and looking at what's the customer experience, the payment experience that we want to set for the whole region, so that as we do new things, we're doing them consistently throughout. And the reason I say that is, if you pay on the streetcar today, you simply can't do that with GO because GO is fare by distance, and if we had everybody tapping on the train, actually the fare by distance doesn't work because you have to know where you started and where you ended. And that's not the case with the TTC. So we have to look with our municipal partners at both the fare policy and the way people pay, as well as where the equipment is installed and actually how you physically interact with that. Whether it's gates, like in the TTC subway, or on a vehicle like the GO bus and the streetcar, or off-board like GO train is today. So we're doing a bit of a work with Matthew's team in particular, Presto, and the planning team to look at the regional fare experience, and then we're going to start updating things as we modernize different parts of the system. But today your issue is right, and we have to balance the fare experience as well as with the inspection and all the different fare policies.
Ian, are you going to talk about the washrooms? I mean, that's an interesting one. That's an important one.
No, I think that's a very good point. I mean, from some of our areas where we staff, some places are open a lot later than others, and also we are targeting washrooms on the trains as well as being, you know, the best, you know, the best options there, because people have time to use the washrooms more often on the trains than at stations. They tend to just go get in the car or move away. But I think in terms of the hours and coverage that we have open on trains, open on stations, is something we keep under review, and I think that's a valid comment there, and it's something we should take back and look more seriously at.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for the Thank you for the feedback. I'm just conscious that we're motoring through time. I want to get through as many questions. I'm only standing in the middle because there are about as many people here actually online. So we're going to take the first question from online. So for everyone that's joining us online, welcome to the Ask Metrolinx Town Hall at the Go Burlington station. And our first question from the live stream. What is the progress on Pearson Transit Hub? Will we see more buses to the airport this year from communities farther away like Waterloo, Markham, and Newmarket? I think, Mathieu, looks like you've got the microphone. You're taking this question.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. I think we're all working very hard with the Greater Toronto Airport Authority to work on Pearson. We know Pearson is showing huge kind of traffic growth, both from customers, from employees, from people who are visiting, picking up and dropping off, and they're using more and more transit. So, I mean, Up Express is already an excellent solution, and it's been growing very fast. I know Mark has all the numbers in mind. I know on all the buses we've been working, and there's both kind of more Go buses that are going there and more municipal buses too. And then I would say there's this year, and then in the future, because the airport is continuing to grow, there's a lot of work right now to really reorganize the transit hub at the airport, because today some buses, they don't stop systematically at all terminals, so it is a bit inconsistent depending on which provider. Sometimes they stop only at Terminal 1, some others only stop at Terminal 3, and so there the idea is to go towards an integrated transit hub where all the buses would come and go, so really easy to use from a customer standpoint, and where they can easily access whatever terminal they want to use. So short term, there will be more service, and long term, it's really about reorganizing the entire transit hub at the airport, and that's work that's underway.
Thank you, Mathieu. And just because you said I'd bring the numbers, so on average, actually on your corridor, on this Lakeshore West line, the growth over the period of April through November, which is our latest data period, is about 4.5. We're seeing the airport kind of Up Express route growing at about 2 points ahead of that, so just over 6%. We're going to come back to the audience now. I think there's a question been long waited in the back there. If I could just ask the people who are please asking questions, if you could keep your questions as tight as you can, we'll get through as many questions as we can before we get to the end this evening. Go ahead.
Ann Marsden. I'm from Burlington, a resident of since 1972, and I've used the Go transportation to go to the federal court in Toronto many times up until the last 4 years ago. Today I came to a public meeting and I was absolutely horrified that when we parked our car, I used a walker and I used a scooter. If I'd used my walker, I would never have made it in here. There are no curb cuts all around the perimeter sidewalk. We had to come, how far a distance? Quarter of a mile with no curb cut. That's not even just an issue of insensitivity and against the legislation. It's also an issue of cost. Why would you build sidewalks without curbs going up and then have to go back to them at a very phenomenal cost? Thank you.
So can I unreservedly apologize for that experience? And can we commit to take that away? However, can I openly share with you some of my own feelings about our parking areas? And that is that I come from a world where people, as you say, walk, cycle, and get to stations in a way which is easy. And I found our own parking spaces haven't got walkways, safe walkways designed. Our parking areas are literally designed for cars. And I don't think our parking areas consider your circumstances as which you describe well enough. But it's even, I would say, it's even more obvious than just curb cuts. So I fully support your thing, but I have asked the team, and Mathieu has got a project team that's put together to look at how do we make our stations much, much more accessible outside. And we have improvements to make there. So I apologize for your experience.
Thank you for the...
That is 20 years too late.
Okay.
It should be done right at the beginning.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
That's what the law is.
You are 100% correct.
Okay, so we have another question, I think, in the back here, and then a gentleman at the front.
Thanks.
We're trying to...
Thank you very much, and I just want to commend you all for sitting up here as well and doing this. I'm wondering, in particular, the Burl Oak Underpass. We started down this path. I'm Sean from Oakville. The Burl Oak Underpass, the city of Burlington and the town of Oakville had their money in the bank in 2015 to get that Burl Oak Underpass done. We were told to update our EA, which we did, and then the shovels would be in the ground in 2019. And now the latest numbers have us looking at 2021, 22, before a shovel even goes in the ground. I know that economies of scale had Metrolinx add a bunch of projects into the tender, but I'm wondering if the recent news about the problems with the P3 in the development community is the reasons why these projects continue to get kicked along. And I'm wondering if you can maybe speak to the fact that this isn't planned, this is happening, but perhaps maybe 7 years is much too long to wait for money that's been allocated to get a shovel in the ground on this project. Thank you.
So Matt will answer the question because there was a very particular construction issue and volume of work issue, but I would like to just deal with a question on P3s. So this was not to be a DBFOM, or this was not a project finance P3, which is where the challenge is. With project finance P3s in a market where there's significant risk transfer, is the P3 type project, which we are moving, which we are adjusting. Let's put it like that. This project was not. This is not about P3s. This was going to be a standard sort of construction financed AFP, which is so the market sensitivity to P3s is not really the issue here. But it's great that you asked the question. But Matt, maybe you want to talk about the project.
Yeah, so the Burl Oak grade separation that you were just talking about is part of a large, as Phil says, AFP project, which includes grade separation at Kerr Street as well, station upgrades, Mimico, Long Branch, and several stations on Lakeshore West. So altogether totaling about $500 million. The reason for delay on this project was the major concerns we have when we deliver big projects like this is one, that we do it safely, and two, that we don't interrupt or disrupt passenger journey or the customer experience as far as is reasonably practical. When we started looking at how we were going to deliver this sort of large volume of work, we were looking at a delay in the timetable and a delay on journey times of up to 22 minutes, which we just found to be totally unacceptable. So the team have been doing a huge amount of work, and we put this procurement, this out in the market at the moment. We've got companies that are very interested in tendering this and are well underway with the procurement process, but we put it on pause while we worked out how we could build this and how we could deliver this work in a way that was going to minimize the impact on journey times and customer experience. And we've now got to the situation where we have a proposal where we can basically deliver this with very minimal impact on the passenger. So we're just about, and I'm talking in the next 4 or 5 weeks, ready to go back out to the market, re-energize this procurement and get this scope of work moving again.
Thank you. Kelsey, you have a question? Then I have a gentleman here in the blue suit. I know you've been very patient. Thank you. Everyone will get to as many as we can.
Hi, I'm Ashley Ryan. I live near Clarkson Station. I take the train every day to downtown Toronto. And my question is around the proposal around naming rights to stations. So I've heard that it's been proposed that some of the stations are going to be auctioned off for naming rights. And I really hope that this doesn't happen. I kind of shudder at the idea of every day hearing now arriving at TD Clarkson Station. It's kind of like some weird Kafka-esque thing. So, you know, I've heard that, you know, the most we can expect from these naming rights is like $500,000 per year. It seems like that's a really short-sighted way to get a very small amount of money. So I'm just hoping, is there plans to shelve this idea and maybe look for other ways of getting revenue?
So maybe I'll take that one, since it's my team that, sorry, Mark, over here. So we are looking at all ways to obviously optimize the revenue streams from operating this train system, this rail system, this bus system, such that we can actually help improve the experience in other areas. So we acknowledge that we don't want to always pass on costs to our riders. So we're looking at all options. As it relates to station naming rights, This is something that has been successfully worked through either in the long-term or short-term promotionally in other jurisdictions. And right now, we're still looking at that as an option.
And some of, if your point is, excuse me, let's just try and keep this orderly. So in terms of your question, so it could be that there's sort of a scale of options here. If we have on a station like this, we have a lot of advertising assets. And so it could be that TD says, at Burlington, we'd like to pay you a premium to get all of the advertising assets because we want to give Burlington a TD look and feel. That may not be a full naming right, but could be something in between. So I think what is really important about that initiative that we went to market with is we're testing the market. Previously, as an organization, we didn't do much with what we call non-fare revenue. And we look at non-fare revenue as a key sort of enabler to keep fares in place, because it all goes into our budget. Keep the burden on taxpayers as low as possible. So when Leslie spoke earlier about transit-oriented development, in the past, government and ourselves would have gone and built stations, and the taxpayer would have paid. We're now shifting that to where we're saying, well, if developers are interested to build on a property like this, why don't they pay for the station? So these are all techniques that we're following to lower the burden on taxpayers, to lower the burden on fares. But your comment is appreciated. Not everyone. Some people can identify with, let's just say, Scotiabank Arena or something like that. Some people say, I don't want my home station to be called Scotiabank, whatever. We take that on board. We've not decided on anything yet. We're testing the market to see what the market wants to do about this.
And the other thing I'd add is we are always thinking about the customer experience. We know, on this line for you, we know that you appreciate the experience. We know that you recommend it to others. We know that you want to continue to use the service. So the actual experience we deliver, 8 out of 10 folks like and love the service. We don't want to compromise that. That's absolutely paramount. That is first and foremost. That'll be in our consideration set for sure.
So if you look at Clarkson Station, right, there's like half-empty parking. Clarkson Station, the parking lots are totally underutilized. There's 2 massive parking lots on either side of the station, and those could be filled with retail space. Like, I think that would give back to the community, and that would give back to passengers. Naming the station, it's going to be such a small amount of money, and it's not going to give back to the community.
So maybe at the end, you and I can have a quick chat, and we can talk a little bit about some other examples.
I think we do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you very much. Okay, more next.
And we have a couple of... Got you.
Thanks very much. Mr. Vester and your team, congratulations on your initiative to come out and speak with us and to listen to what people have to say. It's very appreciated.
Thank you.
My name is Phil Richardson. I'm the Vice President of Development for a large commercial property developer. And I've had the blessing to work around the world on very large projects. I've led projects as big as 5 million square feet in size. Every one of them has had a transportation dimension apart from a car. And so, it's something that I've learned to sort of live with and to exploit. I'm coming at it from one angle, you're coming at it from another. When I see the opportunity that exists in some of the stations that I've actually used, this one being an example, one of the things that I see is, in my opinion, they're quite under-commercialized. And when I compare it to Hong Kong, when I compare it to Shenzhen, when I compare it to Abu Dhabi, all cities in which I've worked, Kunming, I realize what the potential is. Wonderful opportunities, and here's where the benefit is for all of us here. The benefit, as this lady actually said a moment ago, is to derive a contribution to the cost of receiving the service that we all enjoy. And if done in a sensitive manner, which I detect Mr. Vester is telling you, then I believe there's tremendous opportunities to really amp up the commercial income. Now, that's my statement. Here's my question. I notice, of course, you know, there's a lot of talk about the concept of paying for parking, and the possibility that might be the case. And to my eye, it's somewhat counterproductive to the concept of getting people out of cars and out of the train. So, you know, have you given consideration to these alternative and what I say actually major income driving initiatives in preference to doing something that might be seen as counterproductive to the actual ride experience?
Yeah, a very good question. And I'm going to let Leslie talk a little bit about the Trans-Darien development, and I'll want to answer your parking question. You know, when I look at this station building, this is a very beautiful station building and how it was built and laid out and everything. I would say, though, that this building has nearly no concept of retail built into it. So this was built at a time, and I'm not criticizing what's gone before, but I'm just saying the way that we build stations in the future will not be like this. Even though Burlington, this is a fantastic station. I mean, it's big and it's got huge, and it's got a great bus loop. All of that's necessary. The pickup drop-off is necessary. The parking is necessary. But if you just look around us, if this was slightly differently designed, there could have been more retail facilities, which would then contribute to offsetting costs. And Leslie will talk to you about what we do differently. So on parking, there was a story in a newspaper, but that story in a newspaper must always be considered for the fact that these are stories that get out there. It's not a policy position. We are looking at our community very carefully, and we will not be doing anything that's counterproductive to people coming to our services and our stations. Currently, we've got 77,000 parking bays. We're the largest, I'm told by our team, we are the largest owner of parking spaces in North America. We're in the process of adding 23,000 more. So this is where we are. And the reason for that is because we are sensitive to the fact that the automobile, because I say to people sort of tongue-in-cheek, Canada is not a large country. Canada is a gigantic country. I mean, the scale of Canada is such that Canada will never be fully served as the UK, or as the examples you mentioned, Hong Kong or Japan on the Shinkansen and the local services, will never be served to the same intensity by public transit, because it's just, the investment would be too big. So what we have to think about is that there's a balance to be struck between how much parking we provide, and therefore that's why we increase parking by the 23,000 spaces. But here's the real challenge for us. By 2031, we currently move 80 million people per year. By 2031, with all of our infrastructure improvements and running more frequent trains, of which Lakeshore West will, in the very near future, benefit from more trains as well, we'll be moving 200 million people. So, and that's 10 years from now. 10 years from now, we move 2.5 times as many people. We can't give them parking. So we have to find other ways for people to travel. So we are just in this situation currently where we're thinking of some of the other questions that are important influences on this choice is, how do we get people to, for example, use local transit rather than their car to get to a station? I had a fantastic discussion with the mayor of Burlington this afternoon, and I shared with one of our statistics that says there are so many people that use our parking that live within a kilometer of the station. So they live within a kilometer, but they still, because it's free, they still use it. And she gave me a very valuable insight and said, but hang on, you must remember, there may be someone that lives within a kilometer from the station, but it's a working mom that has to take a car to buy groceries, drop the kids off, and then park, and then go to work, come back, or do something else. And this is the reality. is that maybe if we had more retail over here, she wouldn't have to go and do shopping, and it would have been easier. You follow, there's all of these types of trade-offs. So we are thinking through what are the options to get people to use other means to get to our stations more often. And please, don't be led by what the newspaper says about paid parking. I'd like to make a connection to what the lady at the back said about station accessibility. One of my issues with people living within a kilometer, if we had throughout the year snow clearing on pavements, whenever, not throughout the year, in winter, I mean, you know what I mean. I'm a South African, I don't understand snow. Or when we have painted cycleways and dedicated cycleways for people in the community to get to the station easier. If we had better facilities in our own parking areas, which Matthew and his team is looking at, then we can encourage people that live within a kilometer to not use their cars and free that space up for more people. But in the next 10 years, we have to create a shift in how people approach parking.
By the way, I wanted to bring the question to the man with the answer. Thank you very much for it.
No problem. So we have a question in the back of the room, and then we are going to go to a top 10 question. Okay, no? Kelsey.
Sure. Hi, my name's John, and I've been living in Oakville for 20, 30 years and been working downtown all that time, riding the rails, and I've seen the volumes grow. I don't know if this question was asked because I came a little late. I wondered if you guys could talk about any initiatives that are underway. Electrification is one that comes to mind, but your answer doesn't have to be limited to only to electrification. But what can you talk, and you also referred to the opening of the Bay Concourse, for example, at
Yes.
Union Station. Can you talk about electrification or any other initiatives that are designed to increase capacity on the system, to your point about the growth of the volumes on the system? I'm interested in the plans, the timing of electrification, or anything else that you wish to throw in.
Absolutely. I'll let Matt have a go, and I'll fill in after he's...
Fill in the gaps. Yeah. So it's an interesting question. There's a huge amount of work happening on this subject in the background. We're currently in procurement, looking hard for a partner to work with us, improving the infrastructure throughout our whole network to drive towards exactly what you're just asking: increased trains, faster journey times, better service. Part of that answer will certainly be electrification. Electrification is going to be absolutely critical to hit targets of up to 6,000 trains per week, which is where we're heading currently. Electrification, better acceleration, better deceleration, faster trains on the network, and it will basically be a big part of driving the improvements in the service that we're looking for. So to answer your question, we are, as I say, in market, in procurement, looking to form a partnership with a multinational consortium. We've got several involved in this process currently before 2022, and then we'll be working with that partner to understand the schedule and the timescales around delivering those infrastructure improvements and delivering the benefits and the improvements in our service. We will ensure we are incentivizing that partner and working with that partner to make sure that happens as quickly as possible.
But currently, pick up on Sean's question at the back there when Sean asked about grade separations and the like. We've got a program currently of around 10 billion, which is about creating. You think of a grade separation. Grade separation is the type of thing when the frequency gets too high, it distorts road traffic that is associated with it. We are putting infrastructure in place now. This year, we'll put $4 billion of infrastructure in place, of which a substantial part is related to GO expansion services. And we call this the Early Works Program. So putting grade separations in place to enable the expansion of service in the future is significant. If you think of the Milton line and the Barrie line is affected significantly with Davenport rail-to-rail grade separation, which is a significant investment which takes a couple of years to complete. It's a lot of concrete in the ground, and you get rail track to go over rail track in order to create the capacity that's necessary to run trains. Many parts of our network, we have single track sections. Single track sections means trains can't pass each other, so we're putting double track sections in place. Right here, over here, on the other side of, at Bayview Junction, on the other side of Burlington, on your way close to Hamilton, is a very crucial junction, which is currently very difficult for us to get past the CN switching yard, which we have put a lot of infrastructure in place that allows us to get to West Harbour, for example, which will allow us to run more trains to West Harbour and subsequently to Niagara. If we want to run trains on the Milton line, we need platforms on the south side of the line infrastructure, where we currently have traditional platforms built on the north side of the harbour. So there are very practical examples of where we have capacity that we need to add. We have capital programs that are putting this in place, and Matt is referring to the biggest of them, which is, if we finish this 10 billion we're busy with now, there's a further roughly, it's a public number, isn't it? It is.
Yeah, 15 billion. Yeah.
Yeah, 15 billion that needs to go into the next phase, where we're buying more trains. Currently, with our expansion of GO services, we have, over the last 2 years, grown our services by about 34%. You've seen some of it here, but on many other routes, we've grown our services by 34%. And so we're starting to run out of fleet, out of locos, and we need to add all of those in again. So there is a systematic focus on increasing services and a systematic investment in infrastructure. Does that answer your question, sir? Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go back to online. Again, if you're joining us online, welcome to Burlington Go, where we're hosting the Metrolinx Town Hall. In addition to the questions from the room, we're going to take one of our top 10 questions. So Hamilton, I think this one might be for you, Phil. When will Hamilton receive all-day and weekend train service?
So this is, when we opened the meeting, we said there are some things some things where we are developing options, some things where ministers will make announcements. And in terms of all-day and weekend train service, there's no ambiguity in our business case for the GO expansion, which in the previous question we referred to. We have identified unambiguously that this part of the corridor through to Hamilton and even beyond through to Niagara would benefit significantly from GO service expansion. As I've indicated, we've done quite a lot of work already, construction work with CN around Bayview Junction, that are slowly but surely releasing that capacity for us. And we would expect that in the future, there'll be announcements made by the minister in terms of GO expansion into Hamilton.
Thank you. Susan, I think we have a question. Some gentleman with a bike.
Hi there. You spoke a little bit about alternate options for getting to stations. I'm very interested in first mile, last mile questions. As an example, my wife, we live about a mile from here. My wife works at Bronte in the QE. It's a 12-minute train ride. The total trip time is 4 to 5 times that, because getting to and from the stations is hopelessly slow. Take, for example, the Milton Connect pilot. There's a nice glowing report about that from the provider who was contracted to provide the software behind that. But I'd love to hear what we learned about the economic viability of that kind of dynamic communal transport from stations, or other options that you're looking at for how to decrease travel times in the first and last mile.
Matthew?
So yeah, I can speak to that. I wasn't there for the Milton Connect, so maybe we can have a more detailed answer on that specific one offline. But generally, as Phil mentioned, we're really looking at expanding all the options and working both on-site and off-site, so partnering with municipalities on how to make better bicycle access on a broader catchment area, improve the walkability. In low-density areas, as you mentioned, look at some on-demand models. So how can we get a little bit of those? So they are kind of financially they're difficult to really sustain with the appropriate frequency, because I think a lot of the ridership comes from bringing trains every 15 minutes and to be able to run the shuttles with a similar frequency and low density and low capacity with low demand is still hard kind of financially. So I think the easy ones are really walking, cycling. We are testing some pilots with some trying to test and prepare for driverless shuttles in the future. So we have a pilot that will be running in Rouge Hill in the fall of this year to try to test that. And because we think that in some neighborhoods which are very residential, I think we can make these driverless shuttles work and then bring the cost down for the customer and for ourselves as an organization. And then the last big solution is also to continue to partner with municipal service providers to just improve also local transit access, both by doing service integration, so ensure that when we change our timetables, we work with the municipal providers so that they can adjust their bus timetables to better meet the trains that are coming in and better facilities. So I think Burlington Transit has been bringing the buses on the South Loop and to make it more convenient. And these are the things where we work in partnership to expand all these options to access to the stations.
Thank you, Matt. So we have a question over from Kelsey, and I think then we're going to come over this side. We're going to keep going until 8:30, so fear not, we'll keep going.
Hi, my name is Susan. I'm just wondering, with the expansion of those trains, are they going to continue, or your plans for them to be diesel, or are you considering going green?
So that's a really good question. They can't continue to be diesel, and the reason why they can't continue to be diesel, interestingly enough, is not so much about the environment, but the environmental benefits is relatively small in transit terms. The biggest benefit for us to go with what's called electric traction or engines that are driven by traction motors is trains that have many traction motors driving many axles. And keep in mind, a train wheel is about a dime of steel-on-steel contact that it has with steel rail. So it's very difficult for a train to pick up speed. You can see that when trains pull away. But if you have many axles that have traction motors on them, then the train can accelerate faster and can slow down faster. So that means journey times is shorter, but it also means that if you think of it, in any hour, you can get more trains on that route because the trains run faster. You follow? So where previously only 3 or 4 trains could have run, now you can run 6 trains. So the reason why we have to go to electrical traction, whether it is a fuel cell electrical traction or whether it's overhead catenary electric traction, is all about that really simple thing, is that when you have electric trains, you can run more trains. So, and if you can run more trains, you can move more people. Plus, you move them faster. And one of the biggest things in business cases for rail transit, one of the biggest things that make investments a success is customers' experience of journey time. If someone can get a journey done in 20 minutes rather than 25 minutes, the economists that sit and judge our business cases says that those 5 minutes are infinitely valuable to customers. And 5-10 minutes off a journey becomes a lot of time, personal time, if you add it up over a year. So your question is to the heart of the GO expansion, and a significant part of the investment will be on electrification.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah. So really good question. In the short run, as we get the electric installations built, and we will be increasing our service level, we'll probably look at things like, for a short period of time, leasing diesel locos. But if we are going to run more trains to meet the demand of services such as on the Milton line, more service on the Stouffville line, more service on the Barrie line, we are currently managing to achieve that from efficiencies from using our own locomotives. So we're not yet in the space of buying more locomotives, but if we're going to keep on ramping up the service at the rate we're going now, there may be a few locos we require more, but then we'll start to convert to electrical, as Matt said, when we start to build the infrastructure. Thank you. Another question from the gentleman.
Yeah, should be your easiest one of the night. Why is it that every time I look at the board, the Lakeshore East train is posted sometimes 15 minutes before the train arrives, and the westbound train is posted sometimes 2 minutes before it hits the platform, and you've got a massive rush of people going up? That should be a really easy fix.
Ian?
That should be a really easy fix, you're right.
Thanks.
Answer to that question is yes.
Thanks, Phil. Yes. Yeah. Some of the issues we have, and I won't get into uber amount of detail here, is twofold. Some of our services have more time allotted at Union Station than others. Some from the east go through to the west, some don't. Some come from branch lines into the city and then go off elsewhere. What we've got at the minute is a circulation issue of our train sets going through. We try and give as much advance notice as we can to people with certainty that their train goes off a particular platform without that platform coming over capacity. If we do it too early, then we have a safety issue. But secondly, if we have got a train that is either running late or it's running very tight to time, we don't like for people being on the platform before we know which platform it's actually going to be allotted to. Now, to try and start to improve some of these issues, yes, there's some investment going on, but we're also changing some of the ways that we actually manage and control our train services, which will mean that we get smarter at doing this.
Thank you for that. I think that's one we need to take away.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, and thank you for joining us. My name is Councillor Lisa Kearns, and you're joining us here in my wonderful Ward 2 of City of Burlington. I'm glad you met with our mayor today. We have a very transit supportive council here in the City of Burlington. And my question is, thanks for joining us today, and we'll look forward to having you back again on February 26th. We'll be having a conversation at that time around the Encore potential project to bring 16 tracks of interchange for future electrification. What could you tell the community about that today? What environmental reports have been done at that point, and what types of mitigation type things will we maybe expect to see? So can you help me put this on the radar for the broader community?
So, sorry, could you say that again about...
Sure. On February 26th, Metrolinx... You
said something about 16 tracks?
16 potential tracks will be coming here to Burlington, just off of Plains Road and Fairview. So we should be looking at something around
So can we perhaps do this conversation separately, because I'm not sure we understand the facts of the question right. And maybe we can talk through that separately? Is that okay?
So it's been publicly posted, and it is open as a town hall on the Metrolinx website. On
No, the event is probably happening. I'm just, so we're not, I'm not saying the event's not happening.
Okay.
Leona, can you give us some
people
insight into that?
She's just referring to the beach layover and some plans.
Ah, right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Matt, are you ready to talk to that or not?
Yeah, so not quite, I guess.
Can I just clearly, can I just say we have no reluctance to talk about this, easy to talk about. I just don't know the facts of it to give you a sensible answer. But what I will say is, with any of our developments, and Matt can add to that, we do environmental assessments of our proposals. We bring our proposals to the community to consider for questions. So the whole environmental assessment process is very open, very public, with public consultation. Apologies, I don't think I know the facts. Matt may know the facts better than I do. But otherwise, we engage with the community on a very open basis and take any questions.
So it's worth saying, so yeah, 100%, we're following an environmental process, following a TPAP process, which is very rigorous when it comes to environmental planning around these works. The thing that's throwing us, I think, is 16 tracks. So yeah, beach layover at 100%. So we carry out what we call a rail corridor utilization survey. So we basically come up with what we think the end network is going to look like. But as I said earlier, we're engaging with the market, and we're going to be placing a contract with the market to improve our network, which is going to be based on train service specifications. And it's going to be based on how they think we need to develop our infrastructure to improve service throughout the network. So what that end result is going to look like will be a negotiation and a conversation with us and the partners.
But just to be clear, we won't place a contract with the market till we've spoken to the local community and made sure we've listened to everything and be practical. And if the local community says, okay, but if you're going to do a siding over here, it's going to be unsightly, then we build a wall or we do stuff like that. So the consultation process would flush those issues out.
Okay, thank you for that. If my community likes anything, it's the environment, transit, and open communication and engagement. So
I think we're going to hit all three of those.
Yeah, okay.
We have a question, two more questions here, and then we've got a couple on the other side. We are going to go back to online, I think, in a couple.
Hi there, it's Ann Rampato. I'm a resident of Grimsby. I have a two-part question for you. One, we're very anxious to hear about the status of both the Grimsby station and Centennial station, when those are going to be running. And in the meantime, for all of the folks down in my neighborhood that are driving up to this station, we'd like to hear about an express train that runs from Burlington to downtown Toronto.
Well, in terms of stations on the line of route, look out for future announcements, I think really was said before, but you may have a bit on the nitty-gritty. In terms of the way the train plan operates at the moment, we do, each time we add services, we give ourselves the opportunity to look to see which ones can go quicker, which ones can go slower. There's always a challenge to get what I call the sweet spot where you satisfy everybody, because sometimes trains which go quicker means they don't stop at stations closer to the city and they go, you've just taken my train away. So we do try and balance those around. But in terms of specifics on stations, Leslie?
So just quickly, so Niagara, Centennial and Grimsby were identified in the business case for Niagara, so we know that there's a business case for those. Because we are taking a transit-oriented development approach to this, we've begun, and we have very positive conversations with the region of Niagara. In fact, the region of Niagara is setting up a transit-oriented development office as a mechanism for us to work through them and with the development industry around the ability to develop a business agreement in order to facilitate investment by the private sector into the station itself. So that's where we are, and those conversations are continuing.
The real thing to stop people, I can see you're not happy with the answer. Can I add to that? Can I add to that? So we're building Confederation now. We're building a third track that will run into Confederation, which would make a service expansion around Bayview Junction into West Harbour and Hamilton possible to extend very easily without running on CN's track. The real solution for the Aldershot, specifically Aldershot, the Aldershot community, the community around Aldershot Station is very heavily affected by the fact that people park in sometimes off our parking lots in side streets and the like. And it's because so many people are traveling to Aldershot. Aldershot currently is where our ownership of the line stops. So the real fix that we need to get right is to extend services beyond Aldershot into West Harbour, into Hamilton, to extend it around the bend to Grimsby, get Grimsby station built. Now that's the point Leslie makes. We're willing to build this. We're willing for a station to be built at Grimsby. We now need the region to get developers to come and build it. So all of those things together will fix the situation you referred to significantly, and we are working with the region to fix that.
Okay, we're going to go to live stream, and then we are actually going to break to small groups as we promised we would. Yeah. We're conscious there's probably 5 or 6 hands, and if we break into small groups, we'll be able to actually deal with more of those questions directly, and if we need to do a refresher, we can. So there's a question okay, it's a question from the live stream. I didn't know this was coming. Will the Sunday Funday Pass continue to be offered after this week? Well, what I will say to you is we committed that we would run it until this week as a pilot and a test. What's exciting for us actually, since we're here tonight, is actually Aldershot, Clarkson, and in fact here in Burlington has been 3 of the highest stations of using the Sunday Funday ticket over the last 8-week pilot. So we are, as we promised, we would be evaluating the performance after the pilot, and we'll be coming back with a recommendation shortly thereafter. So good news, and thank you for supporting Sunday Funday. It's a great way to choose transit, choose GO, to get around the network for a flat $10 rate. So it's been very successful. So we're going to move out into small groups. I will encourage my colleagues here and the colleagues here in the audience to sort of break apart, and so we can address any questions you have specifically. If you have anything to do with planning, it's Mathieu. So that will be the future, all the way out to 2041, I think, Mathieu. Leslie, anything to do with development, particularly the transit-oriented development? Anything to do with how we operate the trains, schedules, washrooms? Anything to do with the teams that are on our trains is Ian, Annalise, anything to do with Presto? Matt, anything to do with what we're building today, tomorrow, for the future? Myself, anything to do? We already have a connection, I think. Anything to do with the customer experience, how we are looking at ridership and monitoring kind of patterns and looking to the future. And anyone else on the team in the front here? We've got folks from legal, finance, HR, safety, and the community relations group is also here. We will take all the questions and ensure we respond to them in the next couple of days. They're going to spread out. We are. So don't rush the stage. They'll spread out. We'll move around. Thank you for hosting us. Thank you again to our elected officials for joining us. And thank you for all your questions thus far and the ones that continue. Can you make your way over? I'm going to just turn this off, because otherwise we're going to be... There we go.